Right. Thank you again, everybody. So it is September 6th at just a couple minutes after 5 o'clock. So we're going to get rolling on this one. I know I just muted everybody, so you're not actually going to be able to respond to this question. But by now, most everyone should have received the notification from Michigan State. If you are an active employee, it came in an email. If you are separated or retired, it came in the mail, or it is coming in the mail. You may not have it quite yet. But there are some changes coming to the retirement plan, and we wanted to put a session together here just to let you know a little bit more about it. Anytime this kind of stuff happens, it always brings about a number of questions. So that's what we're here. That's what we're here for, and this is what we would like to help with. So the plan today is to talk for probably about 20 minutes or so. That's how long I think this is going to go from our side. And then we will stay on as long as you'd like to answer any questions. We'll be doing a few of these sessions over the next couple of days, and they will be recorded and accessible on our website and through our new YouTube channel. So anyone who would like to revisit this or point anyone else to it will have access. Okay, so we're going to launch in here and get this started and share my screen, and we will be off to the races here. All right. Okay, can everybody see that? All right, excellent. I saw a couple of thumbs up. Thank you. So I'm pretty sure everybody on here knows me, but I'm Mike Bassaro, and there are a number of other faces on here from Straight Line. You see Mike Rice, you see Jason Fisher, Beth Mosshart, Amy Paisano, and this is a chunk of your Straight Line team. It's here to help you with all of this. But we've had this announcement now come out from Michigan State. We have known about this. We've known that this was coming for some time. And some of you might remember that this was actually supposed to happen in March of 2020. And if anybody remembers March of 2020, there was this thing, you might have heard about it. It was called COVID that happened that basically made the market go completely berserk at that exact moment. And so the decision was made to postpone these changes. What was just announced today is just the restart of those same things. Okay, so we're gonna not everybody was even fully aware of it at that time, but for those of you that were, this is essentially the exact same playbook that was about to run during that time. Okay. So we want to lead you through this and, of course, answer any questions. So we're going to spend just a short time talking about why this is happening. And before I even go into this, I just want to emphasize that really the purpose of today is to talk a little bit more about how this is happening and when this is happening. Why this is happening is really a decision that was made by MSU with the help of their consultants. So it's not that we are knocking that in any way or we are opposed to this in any way, but Straight Line had no input on this decision. This was a decision that was made by the employer, by MSU, and for a variety of reasons. But this is very much in line with what's been happening really around the country, particularly in higher education, public higher education institutions over the last few years. So this is something with which we are very familiar. We've dealt with this at a number of different employers and institutions. So no huge surprise here, but it's always it can be a little bit disruptive, and that's what we'd like to take you through. Okay, so these are the main reasons why this is happening. There are fees that exist inside of all retirement plans. Many of you have probably noticed over the past few years that fees were behind other changes that have happened in the past. And all of these are fees that you don't really see. You don't see them on your statement. They're in the plan. They're fees that everyone pays inside of the retirement plan. This change that's happening now will change the way those fee structures work. It will reduce the fees for essentially everyone in just keeping with the steps that have been taken over the past, especially the past 10 years since the plan first went through a major reorganization back in 2012. Okay? You're going to get some materials from the plan providers, TIAA and Fidelity, that spell this out in detail, that show you the calculations. But the short version is it's going from a percentage-based fee to a flat dollar fee per head. Okay, so again, we can talk more about that, but that's one of the main changes. And the biggest change, for those of you who remember the plan change that happened in 2012, the biggest change from our point of view, from an investment perspective, is that back in 2012, the change was, or the money was in the, what we currently call the old plans, the pre-2012 plans, was not forced to move to what we have been calling the new plans. And this is now going to happen. Okay, the interpretation of the rules has changed a bit over the years, and this is about, you know, for a lot of different reasons, liability and others. MSU has now decided to move those the bulk of those legacy assets into the current / new plans. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. And then the third one, this is specific to TIAA, but the contract structure is changing at TIAA. This also happened in 2012. It went from, there were types of contracts that were in place for a very long time before 2012. It switched to a new style of contract at that point and has been that way for the last 10 years. It is now switching again to their more recent version of their contracts. One thing I want to point out very clearly that is not changing. I know there's been some starts and stops to this over the last year and a half. But the contribution from MSU, what goes into what is called the base plan, the mandatory contribution, your 5 plus the university's 10, that is not changing. I know that it has been paused in the past. It has now been, it's been restarted for the vast majority of employees, and it will be for everyone. And so that is still going to change. Nothing that I'm going to describe will impact that at all. Okay, so just a little bit of history that kind of helps set the context of this. The pre-2012 plan that existed for many, many years had 6 different plan providers. You were allowed to choose between TIAA, Fidelity, Vanguard for all plans, and then Lord Abbett, AXA / Equitable, and AIG / VALIC for supplemental plans. There were 587 different investment options between those 6 platforms. Back in 2012, the plans were streamlined, 2 providers, only Fidelity or TIAA, and it was brought down to 21 investment options, most of which were identical between TIAA and Fidelity. All contributions that have gone in since January 1, 2012 have gone into that plan. Okay. So, as I said, this is the biggest change. We'll go back for a second. The biggest change is that all the money that was spread out amongst all of these different investment options, as I mentioned a minute ago, was allowed to stay there. You were able to move it from one of the old plan structures to the new, but you were not forced to do so. And those folks that have been working with us, many of you know that we did not necessarily go out of our way to push money from the old plans to the new plans for a variety of reasons. Not that we didn't like the new / current plans, but There were investment decisions in some cases why we felt it made sense to leave some of that money behind. Okay, so that option now is being changed fairly drastically for the vast majority of money that is still in those legacy accounts. Okay, now if you've read the notice from MSU, or if you do read that notice that's coming out for some people very soon, you're going to see that there is specific wording about annuities and mutual funds. And I want to explain what that is because it's a little bit confusing, but it's very important to this change. Okay, what most people don't realize, and frankly, what it doesn't really matter to most people, is that inside of your accounts, all of the investment options inside of wherever it is, TIAA, Fidelity, or Vanguard, but they are all, most people would just call them funds, and that's not incorrect to say that. However, if you get behind some of the nerdy details that people like us deal with, some of them are structured as mutual funds. In fact, the majority of the investment options on all of the old platforms are structured as mutual funds. Some of them are actually structured as annuities. Okay, now, for most purposes, throughout your entire investing life, the difference between mutual funds and annuities in this context doesn't really matter. Okay, you move in and out of them whenever you want. You can direct money however you want, with very few but notable exceptions. The difference between what are mutual funds and what are annuities is irrelevant. But for the change that is about to happen, it is extremely relevant. The reason is Michigan State, as the employer, has the authority to move the money that is held in mutual funds. It does not have the authority to move money that is held in annuity funds. Okay, now I know that, again, that sounds a little confusing, but let me try and streamline it for you just a bit. I'll simplify it a little. Anything that you have at Fidelity, old plan or current plan, is in mutual funds. There are no annuities at Fidelity. That is also true at Vanguard and Lord Abbett. So for those three places, without exception, everything there is a mutual fund. Okay. The other two legacy providers, I'm skipping TIA for just a second, but the other legacy providers, AXA Equitable and AIG/VALIC, both names have changed in the past few years. All accounts and funds that are held at those two locations are annuities, meaning unless you choose to make a change on those, money that is held in on either of those two platforms will not move as a result of this change. Okay, so those 5 places are pretty cut and dry. TIAA is a little bit of a mix. The TIAA has both. It has mutual funds. In fact, the majority of the funds on the current plan are mutual funds. The majority of the funds on the old plan, pre-2012, are mutual funds. But a number of them are annuities. Okay. Now, TIAA, I know I'm getting way into the weeds here, but there's a reason for it. TIAA actually has a quick way of telling whether it is a mutual fund or an annuity fund. Okay, if it has 2 names, remember TIAA CREF. Okay, TIAA CREF is that word was dropped from the parent corporation. The parent corporation is now just called TIAA, but the investment options retain that name. If you see both names, TIAA CREF, if you see them both, that's a mutual fund. Okay, and there are other ones in there like Western and some of these other names. Those are all mutual funds. If it only contains one name, like the TIAA Traditional or the CREF Stock, those are annuity funds. Meaning, if it's held in a mutual fund, the TIAA CREF Large Cap Value Fund, that will move as a part of this change. If it is held in the TIAA Traditional, or the CREF stock or the TIAA real estate or one of those, they will not move as part of this change unless you, or by extension, we on your behalf, make a change ahead of time. Okay, we'll get to that. So does that all make sense? I know it's a little tricky, but that's the difference that matters if you have money inside of TIAA. Okay, we can answer any questions about that in a minute, right? So just want to, we've got a couple slides here that just summarize this by plan provider. So you can identify yourself in this mix. If you are at Fidelity, okay, what we have for the last 10 years called the new plan, which is really the current plan, that plan will not change. The money that you have contributed for since 2012, that plan is not changing. None of the investments are changing. Okay. If you have money in the pre-2012 Fidelity plan and you allow this change to happen, the default movement will just simply be to move the old Fidelity plan into the new Fidelity plan. And we will stop using words like old or new or current, and it will simply be the Fidelity plan, which will make explaining this a tiny bit easier. Right? And that change from old to new Fidelity will happen sometime early December. We don't quite know exactly the time, but that's the deal with Fidelity. Okay, that one's pretty simple. If you have Vanguard or Lord Abbett, and obviously these would only be pre-2012 accounts, the default movement sometime, most likely in early December, will be for those to move into the current Fidelity plan. Okay? Again, you have choices to move it in a different direction, but if you make no choice, it will simply move to the current Fidelity plan. Going with the other two that are cut and dry, if you have what is now called Equitable or AIG, which used to be called AXA or VALIC, unless you intervene, those funds will not move. They will stay right where they are. The account will continue to work exactly as it did before. Okay. The TIA one is a little bit more complicated, as I've already said. So we've got a little bit of a breakdown here. Okay. So first things first, before we get to the movement, I mentioned the contract structure. This is not something that I think most people would really notice, but if you have a TIAA account and you've been working at MSU for longer than 10 years, most likely what your account looks like when you log in is you see one, maybe two, maybe even three line items that say pre-2012. Okay, you see base and supplemental and perhaps 457. But if you've still been contributing beyond 2012, you also see line items that just says TIAA plan, base, supplemental, 457. So some people may have as many as 6 different contracts in there. Those are all different contract types. If you expand some of those, they have letters that identify the types of contracts that they are. All of those contract structures are really unique to TIAA. It just has to do with how TIAA does business. Again, that's not good, that's not bad, that's just the way that they are. And you will see new line items, okay? Sometime in mid-October, if you are using a TIAA plan, you will see 1, perhaps 2, perhaps 3, depending on the types of contributions that you are making. You will see new line items for the new, what will be the new TIAA contracts, and they will carry codes that say RC or RCP, which stands for Retirement Choice or Retirement Choice Plus. Okay, again, these are TIAA words to identify the differences in their contracts. Those contracts for people who are making contributions to TIAA will show up sometime in mid-October, and contributions from payroll will begin going into those new contracts at either mid-October if you're paid biweekly or the end of October if you're paid monthly. Okay. After that, on a set schedule, one in most likely October and one in December, money, mutual fund money from the legacy TIAA contracts will begin to move into those new RC or RCP structures. Okay. Again, annuity balances will not change. The most common question that people have about annuities at TIAA is about the most famous option that is available for an investment at TIAA, and that is the TIAA Traditional Fund. Any TIAA, I know I'm a broken record here, but I'm going to say it again. Any money that is in the TIAA Traditional, old plan, new plan, base, supplemental, will not move unless you tell it to. Okay, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Many of you are familiar with the restrictions that come with TIAA, particularly in the base contracts. And those restrictions still exist. They are different in the RC, as is the payout ratio, or the payout percentage, excuse me, and some of the rules about how that money can be moved out and some of the guarantees that go with it. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that particular investment, because we could spend 45 minutes really just talking about that one. We will talk to you about that individually if you would like, but that's probably the most significant change for many people because they are familiar with some of the rules that are unique to the TIAA Traditional Fund. Okay, so that's the basic pattern that will happen with TIAA. Okay, couple of important considerations. Again, we don't have time to go over every single moving part of this. Let's just say that there are differences in the choices that you can make and depends on whether you are an active employee at MSU, whether you are above or below age 59 and a half. Those are all kind of inflection points where, depending on where you fall on that, some of these things will simply happen. Some of these things you may have a choice to be able to go in a little bit different direction than what is that essentially prescribed to you. Okay, those are all things that we are happy to talk about on an individual level. I will single out kind of one thing, and that is, if you are below age 59 and a half and an active employee, there is very little that you can do to change this. And one more time, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not good or bad. It just is the way that the rules work, because below 59 and a half and an active employee, you are still subject to basically the plan rules in, I would say, a relatively strict form. Okay, if you are past age 59 and a half and or separated, you have a slightly higher variety of choices. Okay, so again, we can talk to you about that individually, and certainly answer any questions that you might have here on this forum. One thing I do want to point out specifically, and now this usually is only for people who are separated or retired from MSU, but it doesn't have to be. It can be for folks who are past age 59 and still working. If you have recurring distributions from any of these plans, you need to give us a call. Okay, TIAA, especially from TIAA, but also from Fidelity. The reason is, particularly at TIAA and certainly at Vanguard or any of the other places, if you have distributions coming out for, say, monthly or income or on any other schedule from Vanguard or old TIAA or even old Fidelity, those distributions will stop unless you intervene and restart them. They can be restarted, but because these contracts are changing, the instructions for those distributions are tied to the contracts, not to the company, not to the provider. Okay, so if you have those things in place, you won't get your money most likely after sometime later this year, most likely December. Okay, so if you have that, you want to make sure that you contact us. We can help you do this. We can help you restart it. But those are the situations that are very, very important to keep in mind. Okay, so just for those of you who are not familiar with Straight Line, I know there might be some people, most of the folks obviously on this call are working with us, which is why you got the email that we sent out today after it started hitting everyone's inbox from MSU. But for anyone who may be seeing this for the first time, just want a quick reminder, Straight Line is a completely independent firm. We have worked with Michigan State folks on a very, we worked consistently at a very deep level back since about 2007, which means we were here during the last plan transition in 2012. We've been here while these plans were operating side by side, and we will be here well into the future. Nothing that is happening with these plan changes will impact your ability to work with Straight Line, or anyone who would like to work with Straight Line in the future. You will always be able to do so. We are separate from TIAA, Fidelity, MSU, any of the other providers. We are simply here to help you manage your accounts inside of the existing structure if you choose, outside of the existing structure if you have assets that are outside, or if you are thinking about making a change to the assets that are currently held under the MSU umbrella. We can help you with that as well. Okay, so that was just a quick intro on us for anyone who may not be as familiar. We have a lot of resources ready to go to help you with this. We have known about this for a very long time. We've been waiting for this to be reinstituted really since it was paused back in early 2020. So we have a number of different ways to reach out and connect with us. Your advisory team here, myself, Mike Rice, Jason Fisher, Beth Mosshart, and others will have, we've allocated a lot of time and a lot of resources to make sure that people can meet with us individually. This is going to happen over the next several months. Don't worry too much about these deadlines. You know, you're going to see things like, oh, you have a 2-month window to do this. That's technically accurate before these changes happen, but really your ability to do this is not really impacted whether it's now or even after. Okay, but if you would like to discuss your options, certainly we would encourage you to do this, and we have set aside a significant amount of time over the next few weeks and months, whether you'd like to meet in person or over the phone or via Zoom, whatever, or whatever other, we all now are so familiar with half a dozen different ways to meet like this. But if you'd like to schedule a time with us, you can come on to our website. It's active right now. If you go to straightline.com/MSU, there's a little button that says book now. You can book a time online with any of us that you'd like. You can call our office at that number, 877-338-4032. And you can email us at info@straightline.com. That goes to Amy Paisano, who's on this call. This session, and probably a few of the sessions we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, will be available. Many of you are familiar. We've always posted these on our website. We have modernized that just a bit. We now have a YouTube channel, and the link to that will be on our website as soon as this session becomes available. But we have a couple of sessions that we've done, a couple of sessions that we've done over the past couple of months that are already available there. And one other thing, next week on Tuesday, we're going to be doing a session for the MSU Retirees Association. Many of you have come to those before. Those are open to anybody in the MSU community. You do not have to be a retiree to do them. On that session, Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern, we will be talking about this, but we will also be doing a bit of a market update as well. I know that that's a question that a lot of people have. The market's been very volatile. which is sometimes good, sometimes not so much fun. And we know that there have been plenty of times over the past few months that have not been real fun. That session will delve a little bit deeper into the market, along with a lot of the update that you've seen today. Okay. But again, all of those sessions will be available on our YouTube channel through our website. Okay, you can subscribe to that channel and get notified when we post something new if you'd like. So with that, I will stop yapping here for a minute. I did go a little longer, which surprises probably no one on this call. So I said I was aiming for 20 minutes. Sorry, I went about 30 by the time I started going, but obviously there's quite a bit going on. So I'm actually gonna stop my screen share here for just a, well, actually this is the same thing, straightline.com/MSU, all of the same information. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for just a minute because there's some chat things coming in I want to make sure that I can see. So let's see here. Oh, thank you, Sandy. Appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to just unmute yourself. You can write it into the chat feature, but you can unmute yourself and ask anything. And anybody from Straightline, if you want to say anything that I missed, feel free to jump in. Anybody? All right, thank you, Brian. Yep, Brian's good to see you virtually here. Yep, the YouTube thing has worked pretty well for us. It's been a much more efficient way to get things out. So thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I think we'll take that as a positive. You know, again, if you come up with something later, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And you know, we look forward to speaking with you very soon. So, all right, everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.